What are you going to do when the food banks run out of food? Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about this for a while now. What are people going to do when the food banks that they depend on for sustenance run out of food? I spoke to a good friend of mine that lives in New York, and he said that the food banks there are so overwhelmed that it's now the churches that are handing out foods, and that the lines are longer than ever. Well, here, Feeding America, which is one of the biggest food banks in the nation, says that the country's food crisis is to worsen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. Feeding America says that inflation and the phasing out of the handouts that food banks were getting from the government during this health crisis is going to affect hunger even more in the United States. Here, the government relations officer with Feeding America says that 85% of food banks are seeing higher or equal demand for food assistance compared to the previous month. The higher part is where we want to concentrate at, ladies and gentlemen. They didn't say lower, they said higher or equal, which is not good. That is a staggering reflection of just how severe the problem of hunger is in the United States and how much the effects of supply chain disruptions and inflation are making this so much harder. I remember saying a while back, and those of you that have been with me for a while, I remember explaining a scenario to you. And I asked you all, do you remember back in the 90s or late 80s where we used to see commercials all the time of the starving children, like in the continent of Africa, you know, with the big bellies and all? And I said, one day that will be here in the United States. One day there will be other countries running commercials just like that, but of people here in the United States. Because, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't understand, we are headed toward being a third world country. With everything that the government has mishandled over the last several decades, we are headed to being a third world country. Of course, it all comes down to the monetary system and also the corruption that we have in politics, but that's neither here nor there. That would be for another video. Right? That's the cause of what's happening. But what is happening is this, ladies and gentlemen. It is now that the food crisis in the U.S. is getting bad enough to where now food banks are running out of food. So I ask you again, where are you going to get your food when you can't get it anywhere else? And I would counter that with saying maybe you ought to prep up now, ladies and gentlemen. I said during Grayman's live stream last night, I joined Grayman for a live stream last night, which was a lot of fun, by the way. I said that we will have to use our preps. There will come a time where those of us that were thoughtful enough to prep up now while there's still food on the shelves, that one day we will need to rely on those preps. And I stand by that, ladies and gentlemen, not because I want it to happen, but because it's going to happen. It is reality, all right? No unicorns here. It's just reality. He says inflation is causing more people to need food assistance, and it's making it harder for Feeding America to serve the same number of people. Purchasing food that isn't donated, that is necessary to complete a nutritious diet, to paying for cold storage and coolers, to taking care of fresh fruits and vegetables, which are an important part of our work. Now, listen to what they said. They don't just deal with food. The logistics of a big food bank like this, it's enormous, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, fuel prices are going up. They need fuel in order to keep certain foods cool. They need to store that food in a warehouse. They need to have those warehouses be temperature controlled. So it's not just because there's a lack of food, but also because they have a lack of funding due to the inflation that has increased the price of everything, especially foods and energy. All of those costs are significantly higher today than they were a year ago, and don't we all know that? And he says emergency benefits from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program from the SNAP will expire, and that will exacerbate the problem. Where do people go when they're used to getting a handout from government? Well, they go to other organizations that have handouts, ladies and gentlemen, and food banks play a major role in that. Now listen, make sure you understand that I'm not judging. All right, we're all in different parts of our lives, and there's probably people here who are doing very well. There's probably some of you that are watching this right now who are doing very well in life, and at one time needed assistance. All right, so I'm not judging, I'm just telling you like it is. I want to encourage people to prepare, but you need to understand that if you are in a position where you rely on government assistance to feed you and your family, sooner than later that assistance will be gone, because the one thing government cares about is not you. It is government itself. So make sure that you prep up now. If you have to get a second job, go get a second job. All right? Now, everything I'm telling you is what I would do. You have to do what you feel is best for you. But do you think that it's best for you to get a second job now and stock up for what's eventually going to be at your front doorstep? Or do you think that it's best to just go home and chill out on the couch and not do anything knowing what's coming? If not for yourself, then do it for your family. I'll finish this one off with this because I have a couple other articles that I really want to share with you. Hall says on average, participants will lose $82 a month in SNAP benefits. And people who qualify for the minimum benefits, the allotment drops from $250 to $20. That is incredible. The allotment is going to drop by more than 95%. I implore you to stock up now. If you can't afford the fancy stuff, so be it. You don't need the fancy stuff to live. What you need are good calories. Go out there and stock up the things that you already eat and stock them up in mass, because you are going to need them. You know what? Sooner or later, we're not going to be able to put out this message. Right, ladies and gentlemen? Sooner or later, YouTubers like myself are not going to be able to put out this message. So if you're listening to this today and one day we're no longer here because for some reason or another the government tells whoever it is that they deal with in corporate America, hey, we can't have these guys telling people to stock up anymore because there's not enough. Stock up now, ladies and gentlemen. And some more great news, ladies and gentlemen. Here's Chicken Little again, okay? For any Chicken Littles out there, join the club. Drought, snow, freeze further damaging U.S. wheat. We already know that there is going to be a dismal winter wheat season. All right, we already know that because of the drought that's been going on and the high winds that's been going on. I've actually been communicating with the farmer friend that I have from Texas that's been giving me intel on what's going on over there with the drought and with the cost of the input costs and all those things. And she actually sent me some pictures here the other day. Let me go ahead and see if I can put some of those up so you can see what it actually looks like on the ground over there. So things are not getting any better. They were expecting rain and they didn't get any rain. Now they're hoping for rain come Monday. Hopefully they'll get their rain. But listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. An AG economist says his concerns of tight wheat ending stocks are getting worse. Tight wheat ending stocks. They're talking about the carryover. They're talking about what we have left over from last year going into this year so that we can eat off of last year's and grow and harvest the stuff that we grow and harvest this year for next year. So our carryover is what we're eating off of right now. Last year's leftovers. He says that the stocks are getting worse with more adverse weather in parts of the Western Plains and Western Corn Belt. The University of Missouri's Ben Brown said freezing temperatures early this morning in states like Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska give farmers a reason to worry. And he says, quote, well, we don't want freeze warnings when the wheat is coming out of dormancy, he said. This morning would have been something that would have caused some panic. Brown said the freeze might have knocked out some early planted soybeans as well. He said drought conditions in Nebraska and Kansas are still driving down crop condition ratings, meaning that even if they harvest that crop, that the rating of the actual crop, let's say wheat, if it is not very good to excellent, it is not good for human consumption. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the last report that I read, I believe they said that right now, whatever wheat we do expect to harvest, only have about a 30% of very good to excellent condition, down 10% or down 10 points from last year, so down 25% from last year. So we are now looking at getting 25% less wheat this year that is very good to excellent condition for human consumption than what we did last year. And that's not given if these things take place, these weather events take place or continue to take place like they're predicting here. But some good news, ladies and gentlemen. He says that some of the soft red winter wheat has benefited from recent rains. So that is great news. Those areas would be western Missouri, eastern Kansas, places across Indiana and Ohio into Michigan, he said. Those places all have had the moisture to really develop that soft red winter wheat. And that is great news. And the last one I'll cover with you, ladies and gentlemen, we all know about this, but we have to keep informed. We have to stay up to date what's going on with this. Sanctions on Russian fertilizer exports could hinder global food production. Well, no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, of course. I mean, when we started doing these sanctions, did we think about where we got our fertilizer? Did we think about where the world got their wheat? All of these countries that rely on Ukraine, on Belarus, I believe it is, on Russia, for most, if not all, of their wheat imports. Did we think about them? Did we think about the hunger that we were going to cause in those nations? I'm not sure if we did, but if we didn't, we sure should have. Here it says the director of plant foods for MFA Incorporated is urging caution on issuing sanctions against Russian fertilizer exports. Chris DeMoss tells Brownfield Russian fertilizer exports are already down sharply, and sanctions on fertilizer exports would further threaten global food production. He says no one's willing to take a vessel to get loaded because it's just too risky. He said Russia and neighboring Belarus produce more than a third of the world's potash and substantial amounts of fertilizer. DeMoss said the loss of that product in the global market would likely hit South America the hardest next growing season, who imports about 20% of globally traded potash. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said it so many times, prepare now. There is still going to be food on the shelves. It's going to be a lot more expensive, and it's going to continue to get more expensive. But the day will come, and sooner than later, I'm afraid, the day will come where there won't be those things that you rely on for your daily sustenance on the shelf, where you won't be able to get it no matter how much money you have. Having said that, I hope you get something out of this. I keep sounding the alarm because it's very important to me that, number one, that humanity gets prepared for what's going on, although humanity will not be able to get prepared. Only those people that are in the know. If everyone awakened today, ladies and gentlemen, there would be starvation within the next week or two because there's just not enough food out there to feed the entire world. So what am I doing here? I'm trying to get you in front of the line with knowledge. That way you can use that knowledge. Do your own research, please. Right? I implore you, do your own research. But then use that knowledge to decide whether you want to stock up today while the shelves still have food on them, or whether you want to wait a year from now when it could very likely be that there is not enough food to be had to go around. Now, what does that mean? AP, I live in the United States. I live in a Western world. I live in a first world nation. That's fine. And the actual food availability may not necessarily be affected as much on a first world nation. But when everyone else around the world, when all of the other countries around the world are bidding for that same food, the prices are going to skyrocket. So do yourself a favor today. If you want to make an investment, and I'm not a financial investor, all right, because of the internet. If you want to make a great investment in yourselves and your families, just stock up those things that you know you're going to need. And it doesn't have to be only food, but everything else that you know you're going to need. Everything is going to continue to go up in price, ladies and gentlemen. So take care of yourselves now. That way tomorrow you don't have to see your children suffer. Having said that, thank you very much. I truly do appreciate you all hanging out with me for a few minutes whenever I put out a video. I do appreciate it, so thank you. Having said that, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I am out. God bless.